Welcome everyone. My name is Corey Diamond. I'm the Executive Director of Efficiency Canada. And welcome to the 13th session of our weekly Discovery webinar series. We started this back in March, just as the world went into lockdown. It was a sort of an extension of our internal discovery sessions we were doing as a staff every Friday. Decided to open it up to the wider community, and we've had such a great response. We're just going to keep going with this every week, and we're so grateful to the community for people offering up their own time and talent to showcase some of the work that they're doing to advance energy efficiency as a environmental and economic policy for Canada. So here's how the session will work. Our presenter is going to do about 20 minutes of speaking. She's got a presentation, and then we're going to dive right into some Q&A. We do have a hard stop at 12:45 Eastern, just to make sure everybody gets to their next thing and get some food in their belly. And yeah, we'll just kind of keep it going from there. So let's get started. Our guest this week is Shawna Henderson of Blue House Energy. For those that don't know Shawna, Shawna is more than 20 years of experience as an energy advisor, as a contractor, as a trainer, and just an overall all-around freedom fighter. Shawna's been a key part of the community for many years, based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She's also an education partner at Casey, and a great ally of Efficiency Canada. So today she's going to be talking about what it takes to become an energy advisor. I'm going to dive through some slides and then available to answer any questions you may have on this topic. So I will pass it over to you, Shawna, and go on mute, and I'll come back to facilitate the Q&A.
Okay, great, thank you. So, hi everybody. So the title here is Becoming an Energy Advisor. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a ride through my life story. Here we are. I'm not going to tell you all about this. You can look at it, but all of this work, I started in 1990 as an R2000 evaluator, became one of the first energy advisors in Canada. We beta tested the Inner Guide for Houses program in the early 90s. And so I just wanted to, this is a lot to look at. You don't have to read it. I just wanted to say, I've got some street cred here. So actually, I'm going to pip back here. So Blue House Energy, we started up in 2013. And so I am no longer an in-the-field energy advisor, but I am training people with industry-led mentoring programs. So not me personally training, but we have energy advisors who are doing the training for us. We're just running the whole thing. So who becomes an EA? Well, there's a lot of different answers to that question, and it depends on the path that you come from. I know people who are EAs who are, come out of the industry, of the construction industry, people who have just really interested in technical challenges, people who want careers in that are lead them to help to reduce carbon emissions and environmental damage, and also construction and design professionals who are already in the building sector who are looking for a value add to their services. So we have in our training candidates who run through the gamut from new grads looking for a career path to mid-career folks who are looking to change from other sectors, and also, and these are this is a good category, is tradespeople who have experience in the building industry and their bodies are tired or just kind of damaged and they can't do, they're looking for ways to continue their work within the industry. Currently, we have Inner Guide for Houses rating service, which is one of the ways that energy advisors are typically employed. So energy advisors within this system, which is a national system, work for service organizations, and NRCan provides the rating service. So you maybe have seen some of those reports and numbers, ratings that people get for their houses once they have a blower door test and an energy evaluation done. There are different roles for the EAs in the Guide for Houses ecosystem right now. Once you are an energy advisor, you can work in new construction or existing houses. You can work within multi-unit residential buildings. You can become a quality assurance specialist in any of those 3 areas. Each service organization needs a manager, and those managers also have to be have training as energy advisors. And then you can move into these other interesting areas like the CHPA Net Zero label and other high performance programs. Lots of folks sort of go, oh yeah, well that's cool. You take a big fan and you go to a house and that's groovy. But you know, we actually are building science experts, and we work. And this is from my experience. I have worked with all of these different layers of the industry. So utility programs, R&D. I've worked with program providers like excuse me, for demand side management. Worked on tons of research projects, done advocacy work, you know, training people, worked with homeowners, worked with training organizations, and also worked on integrated design teams. So, you know, this role, because we have this, as you get into the field, you get better and better and deeper into building science, then you have this very unique role that allows you to bring all the information about the building and help other people make decisions around best practices. And I really, you know, just to go back to this is all because I became an energy advisor back in 1990. So my whole career as a responsible adult has been in this area. So there are lots of job prospects out there. Currently, we are, sorry, not currently, but in the past, a lot of work that energy advisors have done has been in voluntary programs. For example, when I started out, I was a R2000 evaluator, which was a voluntary program for builders to take on. And then we have voluntary programs in terms of existing houses and rebate and incentive programs. Nobody actually has to do those programs, but if you want to obviously have a rebate or an incentive, you obviously have to go through that. And the Guide for Houses program is one way that that organizations verify, quantify, and benchmark energy savings for their programs. But currently, we're moving through a whole different layer of code issues. And so code is going to be driving a bunch of work that requires energy advisors. The STEP Energy Code in BC, the upcoming Tiered Energy Code for national. And the best way to get to a lot of those targets is through performance-based compliance. So instead of going through what's called the prescriptive path, as in thou shalt put this much R value in your walls, you can have much more flexibility in how you meet a target. So that's, and we have 110,000 plus or minus new houses built every year. So, there's a significant amount of work there. But what I really want to point out in light of what we've seen in other discovery sessions is that the renovation industry is huge. We have the opportunity to do a huge amount of work in a sustainable manner for both the homeowners and for businesses over a period of years with 14.5 million existing houses, which uses about 14% of the energy, overall energy in Canada, and produces about 11% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. So we're in a sector that we can do a lot of really positive things in terms of improving, or back that up, in terms of working towards a low carbon economy, and also helping people in general. So here's what I wanted to talk about, because this is my favorite part about being in the field, is renovations, retrofits going into existing houses. Basically, an energy advisor becomes CSI Household Edition. You have all the need to diagnostic tools. You are a diagnostic tool. No, you have performance tools. You can then diagnose problems. You determine the sources, you recommend solutions. You know, if you're curious and you have you're a lateral thinker, a good nose, so you can smell weird things in houses, like, you know, what do you get to know what mold smells like. Good eyes, you can sort out what's going on. 3D puzzle champ, that's my favorite part, is actually trying to figure out what's going on in this 3D puzzle. So when we're talking about energy efficiency and renovations and what an energy advisor does, we have this thing called the energy conservation renovation pyramid. And at the bottom here are things that happen. These are non-permanent choices that people make: appliances, lifestyle choices, lighting. These are all things you can change, or you can change back to, or you can rearrange. These things up here, draft proofing, insulation, mechanical systems, siding, windows, energy generation, those are all permanent parts of the building, and those lead to long-term energy security, and those are the things that are going to hit us in terms of what we do best in terms of getting to low carbon. So we need to be able to develop deep energy retrofit roadmaps that lead us to an understanding of how to get there. So this is part of what I do in my work, and work with other with EAs in the field now. And we're looking at different continuums of energy reduction. So going from energy efficiency work, which is replacing light bulbs and changing out equipment, to actually diving into how do we conserve more and more and more energy. So as an energy advisor, what do you need to know? Well, you need to know about building science, and you need to know about this thing called the house as a system, or the whole house approach. And these are all the bits and pieces that make up all of that information. So it's not a fly in, you sort of, you know, oh, I'm going to go and jump into this and learn a few things and learn how to do a blower door test, and away I go. There's a lot to behind this, and as you move through being, you know, a candidate EA to a registered EA to a senior EA, then, you know, you're going to get more and more and more of this information in your head, and you're going to be able to see more and more of how to improve a building, whether it's an existing building or a new one. You also need to know about energy modeling, and we typically use HOT 2000 for this work, especially under the Underguide for Houses system. And, you know, you need to know a lot more stuff. You need to know about envelope specifications. You need to know about the efficiencies of mechanical systems, and a whole bunch of acronyms that, you know, at some point you get to know them all, but then new ones crop up. So there's quite a bit to understand. So you do need some training, and you do need some, you know, hand-holding at the beginning, but this stuff is easy to systemize if that's how you think. So what I wanted to show here in the next little section is what a day in the life of somebody who is a field EA would look like. So you arrive at a house, you measure the house inside and out. You set up and run the blower door on the main entry of the building. You walk through the house, and with the blower door on, you use a thermal imaging camera to determine where heat flows and air flows are occurring. And then you can actually, you know, I've just got a flag here on these on this one image. Airflow looks like feathers, and heat flow looks like, or heat loss looks, is more solid, looks like water or a liquid in these kind of things. So, you know, you know how to, you learn how to use different types of equipment in this. So the blower door and the thermal imaging camera are two of the key ones. You also do depressurization testing to ensure that if you are going to do any air leakage improvements, that you are not going to make people sick or kill them even. And then if you're in new houses, you're helping builders figure out where their weak points are in their building envelope. And then you are going to leave the house, you're going to take your notes and the photos and data, and you're going to create a model, and you are going to create a report like this one. This is the first page of a report from one of my clients, with all their important information deleted. But this is basically what you get once you've gone through an Underguide for Houses rating with, underneath the Underguide for Houses program. So how do you get there? To begin with, you need to write and pass the foundation exam that is put together by Natural Resources Canada. You need to write and pass the second exam, which actually allows you to go through and become a candidate EA. You need to work with a service organization, and you work on 15 house files that are go over some quality assurance issues or quality assurance programs with your service organization, and then you become a registered energy advisor. And then also you can join the industry. So we now have the Canadian Association of Consulting Engineers. Oh, I said consulting engineers, sorry. Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors. We have in that organization full members who are registered EAs, candidate members who are still working on those 15 files, and students who are people who are interested in becoming EAs. And then, I'm sorry, I've got a typo here. Other categories are suppliers, not students, and associates. So, so there's the email address. I'm sorry, there is the website address, and you can check it out. So I just wanted, before we dive into questions, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about virtual assessments, because we talked about that last week. And I think they're a great idea. I think they help to problem solve with all of these issues, right? We cannot hit all of the houses doing them one-on-one with intensely personalized or intensely individual assessments. But we have possible problems that arise from doing a global top level thing. And they're not problems that are arising from the virtual assessments, they're problems that are arising because we already know they exist. We don't have enough training and enough licensing and enough oversight and enough policy in place to get rid of or to control poor practices in the field. So we see unintended consequences already, and in terms of we get poor indoor air quality, which leads to occupant health problems. We get moisture in assemblies, which leads to rot, and in the worst case scenario leads to something like class action lawsuits against organizations that have done a thing that has caused damage to many houses. So we also look at, if there are poor targets that are set by programs in terms of energy efficiency, then they can lock in carbon emissions for generations. So those are more problems that come that bump up, but we already see those problems already in project by project retrofits, right? We have poor practices that lead to unintended consequences because people don't know the whole package. They haven't done any benchmarking with a blower door test, for example. They don't know where they're starting from, and they don't know where they're going to. Poor targets or low targets for energy reductions mean that we're locking in emissions for generations. No suggestions about low carbon materials means that we lock in emissions for generations. Project by project, it's far more difficult and more expensive to reach the goals. We continually have renovators reinventing the wheel. And then, depending on who you talk to, 10, 12, 16 years, the time frame is unmanageable by individuals. So we'll never make it unless we move into bulk aggregated retrofits and automate a large portion of the data collection and improve the industry capacity and expand the workforce. And when I say bulk aggregated retrofits, what do I mean? I mean panelized, produced in shops or factories, and available to many houses or many buildings fairly quickly, as opposed to single house retrofits. So in my head, I work a lot in systems, and this is what I have sort of come up with as an ecosystem for retrofits that take into account all of the issues that I've seen over the last 30 years, meaning that we could use virtual assessments to scale up how we look at houses on that continuum of retrofit options, whether it's energy efficiency measures only or a deep energy retrofit to a net zero energy renovation. We need to look at total cost of ownership. We need to take it off the shoulders of the homeowner, because there's going to be there's going to be consequences to us as a society, and so we can look at carbon cost calculators. And I've given some examples in this little diagram of applications and platforms that are already in place. And then on the actual delivery side, we need to have far more control over and understanding of who is doing this work and how are they doing it. How are we vetting the contractors who are doing this? How are they getting trained? How are homeowners going to be able to trust that the person that who is working on their house actually knows what they're doing? Because that isn't obviously, I mean, one of the things that I come up with all the time is people saying, who's going to do this work for me? I don't know how to vet that. How do I know that they're doing it correctly? And, so we need to have those kinds of things in place. And then performance testing is really important. So we get a gauge of how, when we do this level of work, if it's standardized work, how are we getting to we use blower door tests as a benchmark. We're moving from, this to, X number of air changes to a percentage better. And all of that feeds back into virtual assessments that can help us streamline and focus the information again. And so with that little rant, my 20 minutes are up. And so what are your questions?
Excellent. Thanks, Shawna. I'm going to walk us through the Q&A. So now we're at the point where Shawna is available to answer any questions that you may have. There's two ways to do this. Some people have already started posting some questions in the Q&A format in Zoom. So at the bottom in your menu bar, there's a Q&A button. Click on that and you can type out an answer, or sorry, a question. You can also raise your hand. There's also a button to do that. And if you would prefer to speak, I will put you off mute and you can speak. So thank you, Shawna, for the presentation, and let's just jump right in. First question is from Thomas, and he thanks you also for the presentation. And his question was around remedies. Consulting engineers and other professions that are governed by society, there is a remedy if there is unprofessional conduct. And now that there's real money starting to really flow into building retrofits, for example, in BC and City of Toronto, that are tied to performance, that are verified by energy advisors, is there potential for cheating? And is there a formal mechanism to kind of deal with those kinds of professional issues?
Well, I think that is where the organization KC comes into play. We do need to have some sort of organization that will be, sort of a backbone for how are we going to vet people? How are we going to ensure that their training is in place and that they're doing the right thing? There have been some cases, and there have been some jurisdictions, like California went through a whole issue several years ago where their energy assessments program kind of fell by the wayside and went up, whatever metaphor you want to use, because they essentially had some drive-by, not some, but a lot of drive-by assessments. So remedies, that I don't feel like that's really my place to talk to. I would say, yes, we do need one. We do need those some sort of mechanism for that.
Yeah, and maybe we can follow up with some more information on that, Thomas. I know that certainly there are insurance products out there that are... Well,
yeah. Oh, I could just interrupt for a second.
Sure.
As an energy advisor, you have to carry liability insurance.
Great. Yeah.
You and the service organization. So underneath the Underguide for Houses program, you work with a service organization, and there's QA throughout that whole thing. So you're not operating as an independent, completely independent of a system. You could be working as a contractor for a service organization, but you must carry insurance, and the service organization is required to do a layer of QA on a certain number of files. And I think there's currently 4 different levels of QA on that service organizations have to work with NRCan. So
Great.
we do have some
Yeah.
layers of that. Yeah.
Okay. Kusum asks, you mentioned around people who go from having some employment in the construction industry and then after getting their exams and certification, moving into a service organization. So what about new grads? So, people may not be employed yet, but, eligible to take the exams and start working and start getting on that path. Do you have any experience with that, or know of some folks like how difficult it would be to come from, straight from school and start this rather than coming from the construction industry?
Well, I came at it, I did a mid-career change. I didn't know anything about building science when I started this, or I knew very little. But I did get some training that was fantastic. And I came in at a different time than everybody's coming in now, where when I came in, it was only the R2000 program, and you could only get trained in this if you were in the R2000 program, and there was a lot of support for that. There are lots of folks who are coming out of school and going straight into this, and working with senior energy advisors to get the experience. So I think that there's like I said, there's a whole continuum of folks who are either they're in the industry or they're not in the industry. There's young people who are right out of school, and then there's people who are in mid-career changes. So it's a wide variety. And again, you don't have to have. It's absolutely a benefit to have experience in the construction industry, but it's not a must-have. There are different. There's different strengths for different people. You may be somebody who is a really excellent energy modeler. You may spend a little time out in the field, but that might not be where your absolute passion is. And then there's other people for whom being out in the field and diagnosing houses and looking at evaluating houses is what they love. And that was my major point, my major problem or point. Although I have spent an awful lot of time doing energy modeling as well.
Great. There's a few questions about the exam, and it's actually something that I was wondering about as well, because I have heard, some people have expressed the exam being difficult to pass. So someone asked if there's a sample exam or a training course you could take to prepare for the exam, and if so, where you can get that information. But someone also asked about, aside from just the building science side, are there other qualifications or knowledge that you need that you would recommend in order to take that exam?
Okay. The foundation exam focuses a lot on construction technology and things like, do you know how to read a plan? So it's kind of like a gatekeeping function. Here are the things you need to know. It's a challenge to pass because it is a broad base of knowledge that they're asking for. And we do training on that. CIET, Canadian Institute for Energy Technicians, I think.
Energy training, yeah.
Training.
Yep.
Also, CIET offers it. Building Knowledge offers these kind of courses. Ener Quality, Buildability, CHBA BC as well. So there's a lot of options out there, and I think that a good portion of them are on your database, actually, Corey. So if folks are looking for that, they can find it online right away. Some of the big ticket things that aren't on the exam that are really helpful for people who want to be energy advisors is understanding that you are in other people's houses. You need to be respectful, compassionate, and look at, what are the factors when you walk into this person's house. You can't say things like, oh my God, look at that, because it's their house. You have to keep a lot of stuff sort of under the radar, but be able to talk them through what the issues are that you're seeing in their house so they don't get freaked out. Although there was one house I actually went to with my full-on respiratory mask on because I have asthma and the house was full of mold. And that scared the bejesus out of them, as it should, because you're living in something that's pretty toxic.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a number of horror stories like that. I just put in the chat actually the list of courses that Efficiency Canada is tracking. Some of the organizations that Shawna mentioned are on that. This is not an inclusive list or a full list across Canada, but it does give over 100 courses that are available today related to energy efficiency. And we're doing a lot of work on developing workforce and trying to promote as many of these training courses as possible, and ideally get the federal government to subsidize them. There are currently some provincial subsidies for these courses, so make sure you click on links and see what's available in your area. Speaking of that, Max also asked, how do you start to assess the job prospects in a local area? Like, certainly there's a patchwork of different policies from various provinces. What would be the best way for Max to kind of identify for where he lives, to determine if, going down this path, investing the time, the money to get trained up, that, he's at the end of the day is going to have an opportunity to join a service organization and start doing audits?
Well, that's a really squishy question because it really depends on where you live. Like BC has, with the step code already in place, and municipalities actually starting to go up the ladder of the step code, there's a lot more demand for energy advisors there than in other parts of the country where that's not in place. But here, for example, in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, where there's a lot of action in the renovation market, there's a lot of need for energy advisors to do the work here as well. So you can go onto KC's website and you can see lists of service organizations and members. And I would suggest that actually contacting and talking to Cindy Garreau, who is the executive director, would be a really helpful way of, helping to find out where people are interested in doing this work and what those can we put together maybe a little bit of a map of where there's need. I'm saying this and Cindy's probably going to smack me in the head for saying it, because it's a lot of work to think about, finding out who's doing what, where. Again, looking at this new national organization we have, how can that support bringing people in different markets is a really helpful thing. That's a very squishy answer and I don't have a better one, so that's kind of where we are right now. But definitely talking to existing service organizations, talking to EAs who are in your area, paying attention to what your utility programs and your demand side management programs are offering. Because where there are rebates, then there's a need for EAs. As code changes happen, then we lose the vagaries of having, well, is this rebate program going to be in place for a long time, or am I 2 years down the road, am I going to be looking at something else? So we're kind of moving to the place where there's a tipping point that's going to be pretty interesting, because as we become more we have legislation and building code that aligns with performance-based compliance, then the role of the EA in the field just continues.
Yeah, and certainly Efficiency Canada is doing all we can to advocate to the federal government for these federal programs. Many of you have heard about the Liberal Party's campaign promise, as well as the mandate for Minister O'Regan of Natural Resources Canada to implement a program across Canada to provide a free energy audit and up to $40,000 in loans, interest-free loans to Canadians to retrofit their homes. We've been working tirelessly, from even before COVID and all the way through this as a part of economic recovery, and we'll keep the heat on to make sure that that promise is met. One quick update on that. This week, Minister O'Regan gave a presentation to the International Energy Agency, which was a fairly high-profile speech across the world, and he did double down on that promise, saying that that NRCan will be following through on that. So we will see, obviously, how things shake out, but certainly if there is an opportunity like that where Canadians can get access to an energy audit, provided the cost provided by the federal government, then there's going to be a need for many energy advisors in various different parts of the country to boost what is already there. So stay tuned to our, through our network, and we'll provide updates on that. We only have about 10 minutes, so Sean, I just want to jump to a few other questions that have been bringing up. One's from David, and he was asking about kind of product certification, or how you get on various different supplier listings and things once you've given recommendations stemming from an audit. And if each house is customized, how do you decide what products are the right fit for the right things?
Okay, so as under the Inner Guide for Houses program, energy advisors are not allowed to specify a product. What they can do is they can say, this material, use this material. So for example, you couldn't say use blah, blah, blah spray foam. You would have to say use 2 pound spray foam. And you say use this, 2 inches or whatever is what is required to get to these marks. Same with mechanical equipment. You can't say, or you can specify a piece of equipment that meets specific needs. So it hits, all the right efficiencies and requirements for size for a specific house. And you could use, for example, just one that, this is, I'm not selling anything for anybody, but, like a Mitsubishi cold climate heat pump that has a COP of, making that 5, and a heating season factor of 12. That has to meet Energy Star minimums, so it has to hit these things. And here's this group of products that do that. So you can't, in terms of the building envelope, you cannot specify a supplier's or a branded material.
Got it. Okay, great. Can you actually, as I read the next question, can you just go back one slide? Michael just wanted to see the last slide again as you speak. Great, thank you. Next question from Scott, and this has also been on my list because there's certainly a lot of discussion about what this world of energy advisors is going to look as we, are in the era of COVID-19 and trying to not only make sure that energy advisors are safe in people's homes, but also starting to identify measures, improve indoor air quality, whole house ventilation, good filtration, air purifiers. So do you see that those kinds of recommendations are going to start to kind of, be prioritized by homeowners as you're doing this, and provide yet another reason why people should be boosting the efficiency of their homes?
I hope so. How's that for squishy? Yeah, I think that there's, when you are doing an evaluation in a house, between the blower door and the energy model, you actually look at the existing mechanical ventilation in a building and where that might be sufficient for the house as it stands. When you do a retrofit and you reduce the air leakage, you are also impacting the mechanical ventilation. So the program actually comes up and says you need to supply X number of additional CFMs for mechanical ventilation. So that's built into the program already in terms of getting to a relatively acceptable rate of ventilation. I spend a lot of time on energy Twitter. It's my bad habit. And there's also IAQ, Indoor Air Quality Twitter, and there are a huge number of incredibly brilliant people who are doing a lot of work in indoor air quality in buildings and houses, and what we need to do next. Richard Corsi is one of those people, C-O-R-S-I. Monica Canary Science is her handle, and I've lost her last name right at the moment. She's another person. Oh, yeah, it's terrible being on Twitter because then you only have the handles, right? But there's a lot of folks out there who are doing this work, and you know, with the idea that we need to have, for example, we need to have better range hoods in general, because range hoods don't actually capture much of the particulate matter that's coming from food being cooked, whether the food is being cooked over gas or over electric. So there's a lot of compounding issues that people have been working on for a long time. So I think this is just accelerating all that work. So hopefully we see more of that come up into Canada and be valid here as well.
Great. Okay, we have time for just a couple more. One is Pierre Francis has a few questions. One is just asking whether or not this recording will be available. So like all of our discovery sessions, we are making them available, and presenters have all agreed to that. So just stay tuned to our network. You will be added to our mailing list, but also to our Twitter handle, and you'll see the presentation on a YouTube channel. So in the next, probably early next week. But going back to your question earlier about the products and trying to create a bit of a division between the independent advisors and then the gulf between how would a homeowner know like what products to choose. And I think that this has always been, you know, an issue is in the retrofit space. There's been some really interesting work being done across the country on this. In BC, they have a program that's almost like an energy coach. So once you've got your audit, then there's a coach who walks you through your priorities and helps connect you to the various different contractors and things like that who can give you solid advice. And so, you know, eliminating that divide between, thanks, I got my audit, now what do I do? So I think there's a definite need for that. And we've been advocates on that space.
Yeah, and in my, I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And it's always been the issue. I mean, that's why where a lot of my consulting business comes from is, okay, so I have this information, now what? So what? You know, and how do I, you know, so I work with people to create roadmaps and to look at, you know, these are the parameters you need for these materials, and to actually build up bid documents for my clients. So I'm in that, I've been in that role. In the UK, they use the word, it's called an energy concierge, same kind of role. And I think that's really fantastic. I mean, we've identified that there is a gap there, and it can't, if energy advisors are going to be third-party verifiers, they can't then promote specific materials.
Right. Right.
So there needs to be the second place, and there's not enough information out there for all the renovators, and there's no requirement for renovators or builders to have that knowledge. So they're, you know, that missing link is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Okay, last question. We have 1 minute. So Anush asks, is there a difference between the words energy auditor and energy advisor? And then as part of that, as part of a progression, once you've become certified and moved into this, is there an opportunity to move to things like passive house and kind of furthering along in your credentials?
Yes, so when we first started out the program, when it first was available, we were energy auditors. But then somebody said, you know, if you're an auditor, that's a legal term and we can't actually use that. And then the next one was we were energy evaluators. And that was, well, if you're evaluating something, there's a little legal stuff there. And so advisor is a neutral term in terms of, you know, you're not auditing something. You are advising somebody, you're giving recommendations. So that's a legal thing that's on top of this whole, the whole system. So that's the difference between it. There is really, it's really just the words that are different, because energy auditors in the States, like HERS raters, do pretty much exactly the same thing.
Right,
but
so
you
it's
know,
a language thing. Yeah.
So it's a language thing.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you know, there's options within the EnerGuide for Houses program now to become an EA for net zero houses, for example. LEED uses EnerGuide as one of their benchmarks for LEED for houses. Passive House has its own energy modeling program, but it doesn't mean that they're, you know, they're different. But I've used both. I am not qualified in Passive House, so I can't speak to that specifically. But you know, being able to understand the building science and how the energy models work in this sense means you could actually move forward into all sorts of different, really interesting areas of the industry. You know, you can be, you know, as far along the vanguard as you care to be.
Excellent. So we are right at 12:45. So good work on that, Shawna. That's just
You're
as
welcome.
powerful as actually the content of your presentation. So thank you, and thank you so much for giving us a snapshot of your journey and what it takes to do this. We do think this is going to be a burgeoning area for Canada, and we're so happy to see some different faces and names on this call who are interested in developing a different career path and thinking about this. So thank you all for all of your questions. Have an amazing weekend and enjoy the sunshine and stay safe. And I want to thank you again, Shawna, for joining us.
Welcome.
And we will speak to you next week, everyone. Thank you.